Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who action figure review. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 8th Doctor's collector set, which is available in B&M stores. This set includes 3 variants of the 8th Doctor throughout his life, from stories such as the TV movie, Dark Eyes / his Big Finish outfit, and his Time War regalia as first seen in Night of the Doctor. But this time around, they have all been given new updates on the paint decors, which I would argue to say is a massive improvement. But before we take a look at the figures themselves, let's begin by taking a look at the packaging. As ever, the figures are housed in this window box display with the blue and grey style guide, with the stacked logo and the foil sticker, the name of the set and whatnot, you know, the basic deets. On the back of the box, you also have a bio about the 8th Doctor, as well as some information about the figures themselves. Sadly, the promotional images of the toys are nowhere to be seen. As well as that, the backdrop has gone back to its original standard white detailing as we saw back in 2019. It's a bit of a shame, but saying that, I don't really keep the boxes anymore, so it's not a major loss. Out of the box, these figures all look great. Like I said, they've all been released in the past, but this time with revised paint apps. So for anyone who's missed out on getting an 8th Doctor figure in the past, I would argue to say this is probably the best chance you'll ever get it, considering you have all 3 variants of the costume and you can decipher which one is your favourite, so you're not missing out at all here. So beginning with the 8th Doctor as he appeared at the very beginning, this was originally available in the 11th Doctor set way back in 2010, 2011, although this time he has a fresh lick of paint, with updated paint decors on the whole figure. The paint apps on the head slightly resemble more of what it looked like when they released the comic book variant, due to the fact that the hair is much lighter and the eyes have that pinkish hue around them, which I think is a very nice touch. But actually taking a look at the hair itself, it seems to be a lot lighter than that comic book variant from what I can tell, which I think looks miles better, as I never understood why they actually painted it black, as the prototype actually got it spot on. The outfit itself has also been revamped with new paint decors. Nothing even resembles the original paint apps whatsoever. The coat seems to be a little darker, which I personally don't mind, as the coat was rather dark, which always sparks a debate between fans deciphering whether it was black, green, or gold, or brown. No one could really tell, but it was in actual fact a very dark green, almost like a bottle green. But the main factor on this release is that they finally sorted out the issue with the lapels and actually having them painted the correct colour. Now, this time around they've been painted in this metallic light green, which really works to resemble the silk. It was always rather odd that they painted it this burgundy colour, because again, the prototype got it right, and on the promotional images, it looked phenomenal. But then they slightly cocked it up when it came to the actual release. But it's nice that they've rectified that mistake. They've also used the same colour on all the buttons, which run along the front, the back, as well as on his cuffs. Very nice detail, works in favour for this variant. I think the small details here just highlight the sculpt a little bit more than it did on the original. I think the smaller details here just highlight the sculpt a little bit more than it did on the original, as it felt a little bit more in your face. And then moving down to the midsection, the shirt has been painted in this really bright white, with the cravat and waistcoat again being painted in this metallic paint, the colour being painted in this bronze taupe colour. Now, from what I can tell from the original costume, I do believe the waistcoat was a bit more greyish, but the issue with the promotional images, that it looked different in various lighting and on location. It was the same on the actual film, which caused a lot of confusion as well. It's difficult to say whether they got it spot on this time. One thing to mention is that sadly the original pattern detailing that was seen on the first release is sadly missing on this new version. I will admit it's my only gripe with this figure, as I thought those detailings really made the original pop in my opinion, but it's something I can definitely live with. Finally, taking a look at the trousers, they too have been painted in this taupe colour, which is indeed accurate to the original costume. However, this time around they have added the same mottled effect which was seen on the 4th Doctor figure at the beginning of this year. Now again, even though it's a nice added detail, I believe the trousers on the costume were more of a wool design than it was a tweed, but I will say that it is a nice touch, as it just makes it look more realistic to the sculpt itself. And the shoes themselves have also changed, whereas on the original they were painted in this gloss black. This time, however, However, they have just been painted in a dark brown, which is rather peculiar, but makes out to be a different variant altogether. On a whole, I really do like this new variant. I'm not sure whether I like some of the updated paint apps on this figure, but when the promotional images were released, the colours looked very, very vibrant. In fact, it did remind me more of his earlier comic book stories, as the colours on that costume were a lot more vibrant. I mean, he had the green coat, but the waistcoat and the cravat and the trousers looked very gold and very garish. The sculpt itself is superb and is definitely looks the part when compared to what was seen on screen. Well, sort of. It's a nice variant nonetheless, and it makes out to be a brilliant figure that will definitely stand out in your collection. Now moving on to the second figure, which is based on his appearance seen in Dark Eyes and various other Big Finish audios. Even though this was released fairly recently, the paint apps have been vastly improved on this figure, but the main thing that should get people happy is the inclusion of the satchel that didn't come with the original release back in 2019. I remember being gutted that the original didn't come with a bag, but luckily I had one that came with a Primeval figure, which I salvaged from an old custom that I made many years ago. But before I get sidetracked, firstly, taking a look at the head sculpt, this is definitely a step up from that 2019 version. The paint apps are very nice and crisp, especially on the hair with those dark brown base colour with the lighter tones on the top, which I really do love on these current figures as it just makes the sculpt look more lifelike in my eyes. The face is also excellent with all those neat and tidy paint decors. The head itself, in actual fact, is the Night of the Doctor head, which has been altered just to fit the body of the Ninth Doctor. I did initially think it would be better if they did use the head that came with the War Doctor figure way back when, but I suppose maybe it was impossible to fit it on the Ninth Doctor body, which is a shame because it would have made out to be a new variant to the one we've had previously. Moving down to the body, it is essentially the Ninth Doctor's, but it doubles up well for the Eighth Doctor, as it's a brilliant sculpt to represent the actual jacket as seen in the publicity images. As the coat has all this brilliant texturing going on, the colour of the jacket has just been painted in a navy blue, with the buttons being painted bronze this time around instead of gold. I do think that the gold kind of matches the actual coat better, but this is only a minor gripe. His t-shirt has just been painted white, with the jeans just been painted in this sort of light blue and this lighter blue wash on the top to represent the denim pattern, which is a very nice touch. It does seem to be toned down this time around. If I recall, there was a little bit more washes going over the top, but it still works well. Finally, getting to the boots, they have just been painted in a black instead of the brown, which again makes it a nice new variant, considering that Paul McGann did wear this costume with black boots in the past, because Paul McGann did in fact wear this costume to a convention, and he did wear black boots at the time. Moving on to the man bag, this has just been cast in this tanned colour, which is rather close to the actual prop. The texture on this makes it look like it's made out of canvas, which is a rather exceptional detail, and you can see all the buckles running up the strap. I think my only gripe is that they haven't bothered painting out those certain details, but I can make do with that. If I wanted to change it myself, I would just get some silver paint and add that detail in. Like I said, the figure is a massive improvement, especially with that added accessory and the paint apps on the face, of course. I mean, they just look brilliant, because when you compare it to the one that was originally released, the paint apps are just a vast improvement. I always found that the eyebrows looked a bit cartoony, and the eyes themselves just looked mad. The quality is definitely an improvement, and for anyone who may have missed out on that, I would definitely recommend picking up this one. I never thought we would ever actually get this version initially, considering it's something rather obscure, but I have to admit I'm pretty glad, as this has always been my favourite look for the Eighth Doctor, and it's just nice to have another one to add to the shelf. Finally, taking a look at the last figure of the set, we have the Eighth Doctor as he appeared in Night of the Doctor, or his Time War outfit, or whatever you want to name this figure. Again, this was a figure that was extremely hard to find in person. It was originally a Toys R Us exclusive, and I do remember my local shop didn't have this figure in stock, so I had no way of even getting this, because if I recall, they sold out really quickly on the Toys R Us site, so I had to resort to the second-hand market. From what I can recall, I think I almost paid nearly 50 quid for it, and that's nothing compared to what they go on eBay for these days, so I consider myself kind of lucky. But finally, it's nice to see this figure here in this set, as it's a great opportunity for fans to pick up a very rare figure. So beginning with the head The paint apps are really nice and crisp. The paint apps on the face itself look far superior to the original, as it looked rather soft, and obviously I think during that time the paint apps were applied quite thick. I know the Peter Capaldi figure was the same. You couldn't really see all the wrinkles and everything. It just looked horrible. The hair itself is also a great improvement, with dark base colour with a lighter brown on top. Again, really nice to see this, as it just makes the creases of the hair and curls really pop. One thing that I should mention is that it's the exact same head as seen on the Dark Eyes one, but with a longer neck. That is literally the only difference. It's such a nice sculpt in general, and I can understand the reasons for using this, as it really does capture the differences on how McGann has aged over time. But he doesn't look that different since '96, considering the guy literally doesn't age. Now, taking a look at the costume, this itself is a vast improvement. I think my only gripe with the original was that the paint palette that they used made the figure look quite cartoony, but these darker colours just make it look much better in general, and looks more like how it was depicted on screen. The shirt itself has been painted white with the grey washes over the top, just to show how dirty and worn it really looks. You can also see his blue neckerchief, the gold waistcoat, which also has a slight dirty wash over the top. The pocket watch chain has just been painted silver, which is a nice little bonus, and the coat itself has been painted in a very dark green, which is quite similar to the green as seen on the actual coat. Moving down to the trousers, you have the leather snake band belt, which I always love. In fact, I still have mine somewhere, as I absolutely adored that part of the costume. The buckle itself is just painted silver, with the belt being painted in a darker brown, just to differentiate the colours between the trousers, with a dark wash over the top. The trousers themselves have been given this dark wash over the top to make them look really worn and battered. I mean, he was fighting in a time war, so I doubt he had much time to change his clothes. Finally, he has his gaiters and boots, which have also been painted in the same brown, which have also been painted in this, which have both been painted in this brown block colour, which I'm undecided whether I actually like this or not. I feel like the original got it just right with all that weathered detailing over the top, and it showed how tatty they were. I mean, they were quite tatty in the show, so I'm undecided whether I like this or not. I think this is a really good look for the 8th Doctor. I just love how it has hints from his original costume, but with an updated twist. I think this figure is such a marvellous update to what we got in the past, and I think the main features that I have pointed out, such as the paint apps on the head and the costume itself, just come across leaps and bounds. I think the main features that I have pointed out, such as the paint apps on the head and on the costume itself, have just come across leaps and bounds. I mean, it's such a nice improvement. Like I said, the original head in general just looks so soft, which a lot of figures did suffer with at the time, but I'm glad they were able to fix the issue with this new release. So for articulation for the TV movie 8th Doctor, his head can turn side to side, but the collar is sort of hindering that. The arms can do a full 360 turn. The biceps can also do a full 360. The elbows can bend outwards. And the wrists can also do a full 360 turn. He also has waist articulation, which is hindered by the coat. His legs can move forward and out to the sides, again hindered by the coat. And his thighs can do a full 360, and he can also bend at the knee. The Dark Eyes version of the 8th Doctor is pretty much the same, but he doesn't have thigh articulation. Everything else is exactly the same. As for the Time War variant, the only difference is the fact that his arms are on ball joints, so he can move his arms outwards, and he also has articulation at the ankles, so his boots can turn to, well, gaiters, but, you know, it's a nice bit of articulation. I mean, this figure is still fairly new, so it has more articulation than the classic figures. Overall, I think this is a superb set for collectors who may have missed out on those original releases. These figures in general are just outstanding with all those new revised paint apps, and as a massive 8th Doctor fan, I definitely had to pick this up. Even though I do own the original releases, This is something that I personally wanted to pick up, as I believe the paint apps are far superior on some of these action figures. If you're wanting to pick these up for yourself, then do check out your local B&M store to add this to your collection. I really hope you've enjoyed this review, and I'll be seeing you again for an upcoming review on the 10th Doctor's Collector set. And oh boy, that's going to be a chore. But until then, see you soon, and happy hunting.